Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Hope you had a nice week. And, what we're going to talk about tonight, of course, we're going to talk about what's happening with Donald Trump, what's happening with the fires in California, austerity story, and, of course, trade with China. Now, let me start off by thanking Regan Elite, who's on the stream tonight. Great to see you, Regan Elite. And thank you so much for this story that you sent me just before the live stream. Still no fake story. I keep forgetting. Do check out Regan Elite's YouTube channel. So this is an interesting story. So 12 Reform UK councillors to resign over Nigel Farage's leadership. So this is from The Guardian. It says exclusive here. Departures will add to pressure on party leader after Elon Musk said he was not up to the job. So a dozen Reform UK councillors have given notice of their intention to resign en masse in protest at Nigel Farage's leadership. The resignations could come as early as Friday evening and will add to the pressure on the Reform UK leader after Elon Musk said that he was not up to the job. They are timed to overshadow the party's Southeast Conference this weekend. Now, what's interesting also just before we continue, what's interesting is Farage loves media attention. So, of course, he's going to be asked about this during the party conference, and of course he's not going to be too happy about this. He's going to try and find ways to deflect, to stop talking about that. Remember, Lee Anderson was saying, stop talking about that, talk about something else. Richard Tice it was. So of course Farage is going to do exactly the same thing over the weekend. So it goes on to say the councillors allege that the party is being run by an autocratic manner, and accuse Farage of disloyalty to long-term members. There are splits within the party over the jailed far-right activist Tommy Robinson, who is supported by Musk. Farage was set to address hundreds of members on Friday night at the party's Southeast Conference in Austerity, Surrey, as Reform seeks to build on general election momentum in an attempt to win hundreds of seats in local elections this year. Nevertheless, the potential departure of 12 councillors who between them hold 2 district council seats, 9 town council seats and 5 parish council seats would mark a loss of a significant chunk of the party's existing local authority representatives, all from Derbyshire, a target area for reform, and include Alex Stevenson, who came second in Amber Valley during the general election with 28% of the vote. So once again, I think this is not good news for Nigel Farage, of course, and it's building on something that I mentioned before in a couple of other videos, where Farage is extremely concerned about Tommy Robinson. Now, Tommy Robinson, of course, is in jail at the moment, but when he gets out of jail, he could become a big problem for Nigel Farage. But he's, of course, getting a lot of support from Elon Musk. Now, Musk could switch his support from Robinson to Farage, but I don't see that really happening, at least in the short term. And these councillors leaving are obviously people who are not happy with Farage's rhetoric regarding Tommy Robinson, because there's a big problem for Tommy Robinson. The big problem of Tommy Robinson and for Farage is that if he embraces him, then he's going to eliminate pretty much any chance of getting power or increasing his number of seats in the general election. But then if he rejects him, if he distances him, then he's going to piss off a lot of people who joined Reform at the very beginning, who are maybe campaigners, people who go out and knock on doors, who distribute leaflets, people that Farage truly needs if he wants to increase his share of the vote. So he's caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I embrace Tommy Robinson and risk pissing off moderates, or do I reject the idea of welcoming Tommy Robinson on board and then piss off my base? You don't want to piss off the base, but then Farage doesn't want to be stuck with a base. He wants to expand. So if I were Farage, I would probably go down the road of keep a distance from Tommy Robinson. You're going to lose people. That's going to happen anyway. And it would make more sense to expand beyond. There will be people who will never be happy with anything you do. So they will want you to go further to the right. And if you go further to the right, then you're going to create a gap for the Conservatives to fill. So it wouldn't politically, it would make more sense for Farage to distance himself from Tommy Robinson. He's going to piss off Elon Musk, but what else can you do? There isn't really anything he can do. His name is Stephen, yes. Stephen, was it Luxley Lennon, something like that. Didn't UKIP party go the same way? Yes, it did. It tried to appeal to a very extreme wing of society, and Farage realised, look, we're not going to make any progress if we Yuxley Len, thanks so much. We're not going to make progress if we appeal constantly just to the far right. We need to go beyond that. Can Rupert Lowe name the council? The councillors? No, I don't think so. That was a bit embarrassing, wasn't it? Froggy went to courting. It ended badly. Some Tories have multi monikers too. Yeah, so for example, what's his name? Michael Green or Grant Shapps. Couldn't remember the other name. Anyway, guys, let's move on. So, look, I think this is going to be a story that's going to run throughout the weekend. GB News will probably pick up on it as well, even though they're pro-reform. But there's an opportunity for them to grill Farage somewhat. I don't think they're going to go too far on it, but I think the mainstream media is certainly, Farage loves courting the mainstream media, so I'm pretty sure that they will be willing to to ask him some difficult questions. Is this a potential split in Reform UK? It's possible because there's a certain significant wing of the party who wants somebody like Tommy Robinson on board, or at least for Farage to embrace some of Tommy Robinson's rhetoric and policies, if you can call them that. Do you think Farage will float reform on the stock market? Maybe. Don't tell him that. The mainstream media adore reform. I think they like the idea of that reform can attract attention. So I'm not sure whether they like Farage and they like reform, but they certainly like what they can do. And that's why they're giving them such a massive platform. Like what they should be doing, and I wanted to do a video on this today, actually, I didn't get a chance, but they should be asking questions unrelated to the ones that Farage wants to talk about. Farage just wants to talk about immigration and he wants to attack the Labour government. But what the mainstream media should be asking him is, what about child poverty? What is Reform UK's policy on child poverty? What about the NHS waiting list? What about affordable housing? You keep talking about just get rid of immigrants, but what about building affordable housing? What is your plan there? What's your position on devolution? What's your position on transportation? The issues that are important to people, not just immigration. And I think if the media were to ask these questions, reform would pretty much fall apart, because I don't think they actually have any policies on, for example, child poverty, apart from just make them poorer. From Longford, some of us know that Longford doesn't exist. Hey, stop it now. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat. Musk is upset with Farage because he rejected Musk's advances. Something like that, yes. And it's interesting because Musk now is in the sights of the security services. So it'll be interesting if they actually start doing some investigation into him. But he's potentially, a threat to society. He's a threat to prove it, Max. He's a threat to society. He's a threat to security. He's in almost. I don't know. Could we say he incited violence against a sitting MP, a member of the government? So, isn't it amazing how the Tories are so quiet about all of this? How I think one or two Tories came out and condemned Elon Musk over his comments, but the leader of the Conservatives didn't. Shouldn't you be putting that sort of politics aside for a moment? David McGinnis, great to see you on the stream tonight. Anyway, guys, let's move on. So, of course, there was this vote in Parliament this week. Not a vote, but, a bit of a back and forth. And I wanted to show you this clip from Phil from A Different Bias. He was one of the only people, I think the only person who went into this and explained what exactly happened and how the Conservatives and Reform UK did something really underhanded.
Oh, if you look up the votes in Parliament yesterday, you can see one. There was one vote, the reasoned amendment on children's wellbeing and schools bill. This was the Conservative amendment, which both they and Reform UK claims was to demand an additional inquiry into grooming gangs, even though the inquiry they're asking for has basically already taken place at national and local level.
Okay, just before we continue, and we're still hearing on the likes of Talk TV and GB News how Labour voted against a second inquiry when that's not actually the case, and how Reform UK and the Tories wanted a second inquiry, which of course is not the case.
But never mind that, the amendment was not actually for an inquiry. They say it was, but it wasn't. It was an attempt to block the legislation itself. Finish it, kill it off. And this bill is designed to protect children from abuse. And as I've described a few times recently, like one of the things it does is place a legal duty to report suspicions of child abuse. The problem is, however, if you're a member of the public and you're looking at it, you go, well, who's telling the truth? So you go onto the House of Commons website, you look at the vote. It gives you the breakdown of who voted. Conservative and Reform UK MPs are all saying that Labour MPs voted down an inquiry into the sexual abuse of children. Labour say the amendment was designed to block their child protection bill. But if you had to find out who was telling the truth, you would struggle because it doesn't actually tell you what the amendment was. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The House of Commons should post up the text of all amendments so that people can easily look them up. But they don't. It's almost like they're trying to make it easy for politicians and the media to lie about what is going on in Parliament.
Now, I don't know if that's the goal of Parliament or if it's just neglect. It could be a bit of both. Let's not talk about the amendments because the public may catch on to may cop on to what we're actually doing.
But this isn't a one-off. Happens all the time. In the past, I've sometimes spent ages, a long time, trying to find the exact text of an amendment because different MPs will paraphrase what it's about. Oh, we're putting this in the amendment to do this, or oh no, but it does this other thing. And it's like, can I just read it? Can I just read it? And sometimes you can. Sometimes you can find it because an MP puts it out there. But there is simply no easy way for a member of the public to find the text unless MPs or journalists decide to share it. So the public were left listening to Labour saying one thing, the Tories, Reform UK and much of the press saying another. Like, who are they going to believe? But thankfully, a couple of MPs have helped out. Saoirse Eastwood of the Alliance Party explained that amendments at this stage of the legislative process aren't for actually amending legislation, they're for killing it off. But Richard Bergen, currently an independent but elected as a Labour MP, posted the actual text, which is just like the most useful thing. You can see the bit about an inquiry was just tacked on at the end, but the motion begins as follows, quote, that this House, while welcoming measures to improve child protection and safeguarding, declines to give a second reading to the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Now, everything after that point is window dressing. The opening sentence of the amendment says that the bill should not proceed to the second reading. It explicitly is a motion to kill the bill dead. That's it, finished, doesn't go any further, it's in the bin. So when the likes of Lee Anderson said that Labour MPs were voting against an inquiry, he was lying. The truth is, he voted to stop key people, including teachers, having a legal duty to report child abuse. Now, teachers and similar professionals are, of course, supposed to report suspicions of child abuse, but currently there is no legal requirement to do so. This bill would change that, and all of the Reform UK MPs, as well as the vast majority of Conservative MPs, voted to leave children without this and other basic legal safeguards. In fact, the further text in the amendment even suggests that the authors recognise that this would, there's various points in the motion when you read it where they recognise that this actually would help safeguard children, but they don't like it because freedom bollocks. The entire text has got absolutely nothing to do with grooming gangs. The term is only used in literally the last 2 words because they added it on at the last minute as part of the com. And the last line, and you might look at it and you know, if you're showing this to other people, and please do, and they might go, oh, but it does mention it at the end. It mentioned it at the end. Think the process through. If the amendment had passed, there would be no inquiry. The bill would be finished. That first line said at that point, if it had been voted in favour of, at that point, the bill is dead. How does the inquiry happen? An amendment requesting an inquiry would just say, like, a normal amendment is like, okay, we want to change the bill. You know, we want to insert this line, or we want to take this line out, or we just want to change the wording here. That's an amendment. That is you amending the bill, but otherwise saying, yeah, but the bill should absolutely proceed. This wasn't. That first line says the bill should stop, and that's it. Tear it up, throw it in the bin. So,
okay, now, so this video goes on for a bit. I'm not going to show the whole video. I saw a comment there about from David McGuinness says the amendments are read out so you can read the text on Hansard. Okay, thanks for that, and we can tell Phil about that as well. But why is Labour not talking about this? Why is Starmer not talking about this? Why is Jess Phillips not talking about this? Why is nobody else apart from Phil, it seems, and maybe Sorcha Eastwood? Why are they are the only people? I mean, Richard Burden, I think his name is, the former Labour MP. Why are they the only people talking about this? Like, this is extremely important. How is it possible that, as Phil has pointed out here, declines to give a second reading to the Children's Welfare in Schools Bill? Like, there it is, in black and white, highlighted there. This would kill off the bill. And no one's talking about this. Instead, what they're talking about is how Labour voted against a second inquiry into grooming gangs, or a specific inquiry into grooming gangs. Like, it's insane that Reform UK MPs can go on GB News and Talk TV and talk about how they were the only ones they and the Tories were fighting for a second inquiry. And Labour voted against that. And I'm even seeing stuff on social media about, well, why did Labour vote against it? Oh, because they have a lot of Muslims in their constituencies, and that's why they voted against this. This is insane. And where the heck is the government? Why aren't they calling this out? Where the hell is the Parliament? Where the hell is Sir Lindsay Hoyle? Lindsay Hoyle knows exactly what this phrase means better than anyone, because he's the one who receives these texts beforehand to check, I presume, that this can be part of a debate or whatever. He's in charge of the business, or he at least moderates it. But he knew that this was here. Why didn't he say something about this? Are his hands that tied as well? You know, unless Phil had put out this video, I would have been completely in the dark like most other people. I would have thought, oh, okay, so why did Labour vote against this? Was it because they didn't like the amendment? Is it because it was against another inquiry? Like, I was under the impression, well, they didn't want another inquiry because, well, it would cost a lot of money, and there's already certain findings from the previous inquiry that have yet to be implemented. So it doesn't make sense to have another inquiry for that reason. And that's why they voted against this amendment. But in reality, they voted against it because it was about killing off the bill itself. And once again, nobody from the government is mentioning this. No one in the media is mentioning this. Daily Blase, great to see you on the stream. Do check out Daily Blase's YouTube channel. And David McGuinness, thanks for those comments before. And do check out David McGuinness' YouTube channel, The Two Davies. Anyway, it goes on. This is the guy who is actually the prosecutor in Rochdale. Have a listen to what he had to say.
There are people who are experts based on 15 minutes of Googling And there are people who've actually been doing these cases for 15 years. And for some reason, the 15 minutes of Google is more important and more real than my own experience. There is no doubt in my mind, we're talking about political expediency, we're talking about the exploiting of these terrible crimes for political purposes. And I think it's not mainly public knowledge, but the last few days, James, I've had victims of these abuses ring me up, contact me, reach out to me to tell me that they've been re-traumatized over the last few days. They thought that they were getting better. They thought that they've reconstructed their lives after the abuse that they terribly suffered 10, 15 years ago. And yet, because of the fact that there's been this regular misinformation and attention in the media and Parliament and everywhere else, they're reliving their experiences. They're losing sleep. They've got no services to go to. They're not getting any help. And some of them are contemplating self-harm.
You have these bastards in the media who know that they're sharing this sort of bullshit from Elon Musk for clicks, for likes. You have politicians standing up in the House of Commons using the victims as a political football. They don't Nigel Farage and Reform UK don't give a shit about the victims. The Tories don't give a shit about the victims. If they did, why wouldn't they have talked about this before? Why didn't they implement the findings of the previous inquiry if they truly cared about the victims? They don't give a shit about the victims. They say, oh, here's an opportunity for us to hit Labour over the head with a stick. Here's an opportunity to convince people that we're on their side when we're not. We've never been on their side. We don't give a shit about these people. We don't give a shit about these victims. There were 20 findings, 20 measures to be implemented, and the Tories implemented none of them. Why did they not implement these measures, these findings? Probably because, and I mentioned this before, because it would cost money. See, it would require investment in public services. It would require the police working with social services more. It would require putting in time and effort. And the Tories are either lazy or they just don't give a shit. Especially if it's when it comes to investing in public services. Like their entire ideology is we need to reduce public services. We need to cut them as much as possible. We need to funnel more money into the private sector. And how does that help? That mentality, how does that help? Helping public service, how is that going to help the private sector? How's it going to make shareholders richer? Because that's their mentality. That's their entire ideology. Have I lost the connection? No. Okay. Sorry. The stream had stopped for a moment. Sorry about that. But it's the Tories using the victims here as a political football. You know, where was Kemi Badenoch over the last number of years? Why wasn't she raising this issue? Is she truly cared about? Oh no, she saw Nigel Farage and Elon Musk are talking about it. Better jump on that bandwagon. Maybe I can get some votes out of it. But that bill, that amendment to the bill, let's kill off the bill. Because they didn't want to be seen as voting with the government, because then they would have to admit that the government was doing something right. Then they couldn't vote against the government on this, because then they'd be like, why are you voting against... See, this is the sort of tricks the politicians play. They don't want to support the government because that would make them look bad with their party. They don't want to, and their voters, they don't want to vote against amendment or a bill that would actually help people, because that would make them look bad. So what they do is they introduce these amendments that they either they know that they can vote against, or that are designed to bring down the original bill, as was pointed out there by Phil. The absolute disgraceful charlatans, that's what they are. I'm going to move on. Harriet Harman calls for mini inquiry into race issue raised by grooming gang scandal. So it says here, Harriet Harman suggested a mini inquiry into issues raised by the grooming gang scandal and called on Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch to discuss terms of reference. What is the point in that? Kemi Badenoch has demonstrated... Sorry, I forgot to open the window. So it says here, Harriet Hammond has suggested a mini inquiry into issues raised by the grooming gangs scandal and called on Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch to discuss the terms of reference. Once again, what is the point in Kemi Badenoch being involved in this? Kemi Badenoch obviously has demonstrated that she doesn't give a shit. Why would you want somebody like that on board? Labour's peer told Sky News' political editor Beth Rigby on the Electoral Dysfunction podcast that there should be openness to a future probe as long as it does not repeat the previous investigations. In particular, she said, people need to be trained and confident that they can take on matters which are in particular communities without being accused of being racist. Look, I think one of the findings from the previous inquiry was that the police and certain civil servants decided not to investigate because they believed that they would be accusations of racism. Now, that should not be taking place. Now, we discovered that because of the inquiry. And mini inquiry, I know. The victims have asked for the government to implement the findings of the previous inquiry. So what's the point in having another inquiry until you implement the findings of the previous one? You know, this is not like somebody at home deciding, I'm going to start doing some extra work around the house, but I'm not going to finish that one. I'm going to start something else. I'm not going to finish the first project. I'm going to start a second project before finishing the first one. You know, this is something more serious. There are 20 measures to be implemented as a result of the inquiry, the previous one, that have yet to be implemented. So doesn't it make more sense to implement those first and then after decide, okay, is there something else we need to do? Do that first. Instead of talking about mini inquiries or focused inquiries, implement the 20 measures and then you can decide if it's necessary to have a further inquiry. Because an inquiry is not just about money. It requires bringing people who have been victims of abuse to present evidence of what they went through. I can only imagine how traumatic that is. They did it once. You want them to do it again in a public event, in a public space, in private as well. But it's extremely traumatic to these individuals. And the last thing they want is, well, I need to go and speak again about my experience because even though the government didn't implement the previous findings. No. Why now? Well, because Elon Musk is complaining about it seems. You know, somebody who has zero understanding of what... And here's a question. Here's a question I wanted to ask. What the fuck has Elon Musk done for victims of abuse over the last number of years? Or even the last few weeks? Has he donated a huge amount of money to charities that represent victims? Has he set up, shelters for women to escape domestic violence and abuse? Has he done any of these? He has lots of fucking money. Why isn't he doing something like that? You know, he's talking a lot, but where is the money? Why isn't he doing something? He has huge amounts of power, but instead of actually using it for something good, no, he jumps on his fucking social media platform and runs his mouth. Why not actually do something useful? You know, you're going to hear a lot from politicians, oh, isn't it great that Elon Musk is raising this issue? He's not fucking raising this issue. He's using this issue. He doesn't care about the victims. If he truly did, he would be putting pressure on politicians to implement measures to help the victims. He wouldn't be supporting Nigel Farage and frigging Tommy Robinson. Like, honestly, we're not talking about a member of the public. We're talking about somebody who has huge influence, 200 million followers. Can you imagine if he just said something, even something like, be kind to people today? Why don't you go out and help somebody? Imagine if he did something like that to 200 million followers. No, it's all about him. Honestly. Okay. I need to take a short comedy moment, guys, because, you know, my blood pressure is going up. But I honestly don't understand this. You know, there are other individuals, very, very rich people. I'm not going to name names, but we probably know a lot of who I'm talking about. People with huge platforms. And instead of actually using those platforms to promote something good, they use it to promote hate or to promote themselves. And I don't understand it. Elon Musk has the mental age of a 14-year-old boy. But when I was 14, I wasn't such a prick. I hope I wasn't anyway. Oh, God. Let's take a comedy moment and we'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff.
Elon Musk is tweeting about the IRA now. I think I speak for many of the Irish people when I say, Elon, no one fucking asked you. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. The Irish Republican, get it fucking right, was so hardcore. But now they're as scary as a plush toy. Elon, we're not looking to militarise anyone at the moment. Please and fucking thank you. Elon, you go back to making stupid looking sharp cars, okay? That you can't open the door of if it's too chilly or see out the back window of. Stop trying to incite war in my country. We're well able to do it ourselves. Why don't you talk about some other things that used to be hardcore in Ireland? Affordable rent prices. That was hardcore. The Troubles were serious business, Elon. I don't think you've got a fucking clue what you're talking about. You make batteries. Anyway, follow me. I'm delicious.
Okay, good. No, that's the right response to Elon Musk. Oh my goodness. So we're never really going to get away from Brexit. I keep saying that Brexit will only be delivered when Brexit will be done when the UK rejoins the European Union. So visa waiver system could overwhelm UK immigration services, law firm warns. So in a story I covered recently, the UK Home Office already burdened immigration system could be overwhelmed this summer when a new visa waiver system comes into force for European business travellers and tourists in April. A leading law firm has said. Oh no, sorry, well, it's related to another story I posted just yesterday, I think it was, or today. There's also been fresh warnings about the electronic travel authorization, ETA, requirements could threaten post-peace tourism sector in Northern Ireland, with Americans and Europeans travelling to Dublin and beyond deciding not to bother crossing the border because of the red tape. The ETA system, similar to the electronic system for travel authorization system in the US, requires visitors who do not have a visa who do not need a visa to enter Britain to require pre-travel authorization online at a cost of £10. It was introduced for passengers from Gulf states last year, and from Wednesday was expanded to include citizens of around 50 countries, including territories including Argentina, Brazil, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, and the Caribbean nations. Nicholas Ronason, an immigration partner at the London law firm Kenzie Napoli, said the real problems may not emerge until April, when the ETA applies to those travelling by air, Eurostar or ferry. The Home Office expects a vast number, 30 million, to apply for ETAs. If even a small portion of those, like 1%, get pushed into the visa system, it's just going to overwhelm them. The biggest travel groups are from the US and Europe, and this has potential to create huge queues and backlogs in the visa system. It could be a disaster and cause all sorts of knock-on problems. So what do you think is going to happen if this... So hopefully this doesn't create a disaster. Hopefully it doesn't result in a disaster. But if it does, who will get the blame? Well, the government will get the blame. But who is to blame? Well, Brexit is part of the blame. But the Tories will never say, actually, it's because of Brexit. So once again, it's a result of leaving the European Union. The UK has to implement this measure. But the one about Northern Ireland, I think, is actually more concerning in a sense, because Northern Ireland needs tourism. Northern Ireland relies on a lot of tourism, and if you don't know, people who Northern Ireland has an international airport. I think it's Belfast International Airport, but it's not really international. Most of the traffic comes from GB or from Ireland, and it's going to be difficult for them to continue to because if you want to get to Northern Ireland, generally people will travel to Dublin first, and then they'll travel north by train or by car or by bus to Belfast for the day or for a couple of days. But because you might need this extra bureaucracy and it costs £10, some people may say, I can't be bothered. It's not so much about the money, I think, it's the bureaucracy. It's like, what? I need paperwork to go to Northern Ireland? Oh, well, no, I won't. I can't be bothered. And this is going to harm tourism in Northern Ireland, which, Northern Ireland is struggling at the moment because of the economy there, because the DUP are not, we're not interested in playing ball and allowing great Mario Kart arcade cabinet in Belfast International. I didn't see that. I must check that out if I do use it. Or does Rees-Mogg think we have one species alone? Not sure what that's about. Many tourists in Dublin take a day trip to Belfast on the spur of the moment. The UK ETA will hurt the Northern Ireland tourism sector. Yes, well said, Chatty Rat. I think this is going to be a problem. As you said, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm in Dublin. Hey, there's the Belfast, there's the Titanic Museum. How about we go? Oh, wait a minute, you need some paperwork. Okay, well, how long would that take? And how much does it cost? And then people are like, well, I can't be really bothered. As you said, on the spur of the moment. So it's sad because, once again, Northern Ireland did not vote for Brexit, but Northern Ireland is suffering the consequences of Brexit. And it needs the money. It needs the tourism. Anyway, guys, let's move on. One economic disaster to another one. Rachel Rees-Mull's deeper cuts to public services as borrowing costs soar. I keep forgetting to switch the page. So Rees-Mull's deeper cuts to public services as borrowing costs soar. So the Chancellor could slash departmental spending in spring after ruling out tax increases. So I really didn't understand what Rachel Rees was hoping to achieve when she read out she presented the budget there last year, and she said, we're not going to increase taxes. Okay. And we're not going to borrow more. We're going to stick within the confines left behind by the Conservatives. So I'm going to respect the economic straitjacket the Conservatives have left behind. And this is going to be a massive problem. So it seems, now once again, this is not Rachel Reeves talking, but it's a government official. So it says, government officials have told The Guardian the Chancellor is preparing to reduce departmental spending even more than planned. Having ruled out increases to either borrowing or taxes, any measures to avoid breaking her fiscal rules could be announced at an emergency statement in the spring. Just think about that for a moment. So government departments, which have already been struggling over the last 14 years, and at the recent budget were told that they have to find savings, in some cases of 3%. And now they're likely to be told, actually, you're going to have to find more savings. Now, the NHS is getting an injection of cash, but it seems many other departments are not. They're going to actually have to find savings. Now, we know, I think no one on the live stream tonight is going to be surprised by this statement, but we know that the welfare department, the DWP, is going to be asked to make a massive chop, a massive cut. And who is going to suffer there? The poorest and most vulnerable in society, as always. What needs to be happening is more money needs to be going into government departments, not less. Reeves should never have said that she won't increase taxes. Yes, I agree 100% there. Also, they should stop the Bank of England destroying the economy, stop quantitative tightening, and reduce interest rate. Yes, I was introduced to that term by Richard Murphy in his video today about that. So instead of quantitative easing, there's quantitative tightening, where the Bank of England starts selling bonds that they had bought they had bought during quantitative easing. So they start selling off these bonds to the private sector. I don't know how all of this works, but Richard Murphy pointed out, and it's not good. Okay, it's very bad actually. And but Rachel Reeves has the power to stop the central bank from selling these, the Bank of England. Cahill, thank you so much for that super chat. Amendments should be accessible before votes on them, obviously. Check out the Castle Inn, Newtown Forbes in Longford, which definitely exists and is fab. I will indeed, and I will say that Cahill sent me, so maybe they give me a free pint. Thanks so much. Killer, of course, doesn't agree. It does exist. It definitely does. But this is concerning because government departments need more money. If you want to improve public services, they need a cash injection. If you want to lift people out of poverty, you need to provide the government departments that lift people out of poverty with more resources. And if they don't have money, then what do? They lay off people. Then people are not able to be... staff are not able to be there to provide the services that the public need. And I mentioned before, and this is sound economics, economists will confirm this. When the government spend money, it stimulates the economy. I mentioned before that there was a project in Northern Ireland where I think it was the Giant's Causeway. So it was a project around the Giant's Causeway. And the government were supposed to spend, I think, £30 million, and they had pulled that. At the same time, there were private investors willing to invest money in it as well. And they had decided, well, if the government is not going to invest, then we're not going to invest. So if the government invests in something, it attracts private investment. Many private companies will not invest. And think about it for a moment. Like, if there isn't infrastructure, then you're not going to get private investment. You can't just rely on private investment. So if you want, for example, if you think of an airport, generally it will be the state that will invest and build an airport because it's so massive. It's such a massive cost. So if the state invest in something like an airport, then you start to have small businesses around it, like courier system, like distribution companies. You have shops, bars, restaurants all around that provide services for the people who work in the airport. So just something like an airport or a shopping center or some sort of business district, you invest there, the public sector invests, then you're going to attract private investment. And then, but you can't rely just on the private sector investing because it doesn't really work that way. Greetings from Irishman in Barcelona. Good to see you there on the stream tonight, Owen. Hope you're having a wonderful time in Barcelona. Not too good of a time. I'm joking. More on this, on austerity, but Lisa Nandy says public should not be worried about trouble in financial markets. So we heard this week that the Chancellor is off to China to try and work on a trade deal with, or some sort of trade agreement with, sorry, I keep forgetting because I don't have it in front of me. So Lisa Nandy says public should not be worried about trouble in financial markets. Generally, when government ministers say, don't worry, it's okay, that's the time to worry. The public should not be worried about the cost of government borrowing going up, a cabinet minister has said. Lisa Nandy said the current situation in the financial markets, which has seen a fall in the pound in recent to its lowest level in over a year, was something the government took very seriously. But she suggested the situation was influenced by global trends that have affected many countries, and that the UK is not an outlier. So yes, to a certain extent, that's true. So not all of this is down to Rachel Reeves. Part of it is because it seems to be the case that investors are not interested in investing in Britain. I think part of that is down to Brexit, of course. It's difficult to get access to the workers you need. It's difficult to build supply chains if you're outside the single market and your biggest market is the single market. So these are problems that need to be ironed out or sorted out if you want to truly attract investment. Now, some service providers will, of course, operate in the UK because you don't have to worry so much about supply chains, but and you can sell services all over the world. And it does seem to be the case that services are doing much better than physical trade. But it is certainly a case that some of the measures that Rachel Reeves has put in, for example, the increase in national insurance or the resetting of national insurance, and other measures are, well, they're upsetting business, and businesses are concerned about taking people on or holding on to people or increasing people's wages. So I think it's important not to scaremonger about this, but it certainly is a concern. Okay, guys, let's move on to another story, away from the UK for a moment and across the pond to... No, that's not working. Let me try another one. Okay, here we go. Trump becomes first president to be sentenced a felon but avoids jail time or fines in hush money trial. Isn't it wonderful? You know, everyone is equal under the law, but some are more equal than others. Judge cites Trump's return to White House as rationale for unconditional discharge sentence. So Judge Juan Marchand, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And apologies to the First Minister of Scotland, who I described as Mr. Sweeney when his name is Sweeney. Okay, apologies for that. So the judge laid out his rationale for imposing the sentence of unconditional discharge on the president-elect. Sounds like a sort of, I don't know, an illness. The protections afforded to the office of the president is not a mitigating a factor. They do not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify its commission in any way. Well, it is in a sense, like it's like saying, you did really badly, but we're not going to punish you. So don't do it again. But there's no reason against doing it again. There's no punishment. So, you know, generally we put people in prison to punish them or to keep them away from society because they've done bad things. But Donald Trump is not being punished and not being kept away from society even though he does bad things. Okay. It's a joke. The law is an arse, as someone famously said. You know, it's a joke. You know, there are a set of rules that most people have to follow, but we say most because not everyone has to follow them. Donald Trump, in this case, does not have to follow them. You know, and I remember back in 2021 or 2020? Yeah, 2021. Yeah, when Donald Trump and his fans tried to overthrow the U.S. government on the 6th of January 2021. I remember asking some people on the post-stream chat at the time or on Discord and said, like, do you think Donald Trump will end up in jail? And they said no. There was an American guy, I won't mention his name on the stream, but he said, no, he won't. Donald Trump will not end up in jail. It would be insane. The idea would be insane. And we debated it a lot, and he was proven right. You know, it's Donald Trump will not end up in jail because he's filled the courts with people who will support him, but also maybe the judges are too afraid that if they were to put him in prison, there would be civil unrest. Isn't it interesting that even though the Democrats lost, they didn't try to storm the Capitol? But when Donald Trump lost in 2020, his supporters stormed the Capitol. Nobody is above the law. Trump is a nobody. Well said, Yoni. Nobody is above the law. Trump is a nobody. I love the dark humor there. Well said. Oh God. Okay. Winning elections or avoiding elections. So there's a nice story here from The Guardian. It says, Tory party accused of bottling May elections as county councils seek delay. What's this about? So the Conservatives have been accused of bottling the local elections after 13 Tory-led county councils in England said that they were asking for a delay to this May's polls to allow them to take part in a structural shake-up. Now, this is interesting because we've heard from Reform UK saying that the Labour government are afraid of the local elections. They're afraid that they're going to face a wipeout. So what they're doing is they're denying democracy. They're stopping local elections from taking place in order to protect the Labour Party. But as I've mentioned before, in some cases, some councils are merging into two councils are merging into one, which will result in just one election instead of two. Some elections are uncontested, so there's not going to be an election in those cases. Is it possible that there is some shenanigans? There are some shenanigans going on. Yes, it's possible there are some shenanigans, and it's not all above board. But it's highly unlikely. I think anything that was being underhanded could be related to the Electoral Commission, and they would look into it. But well, it seems the Tories are. Nobody would disagree. Sir Peter. That was a good comment. Anyway, it goes on to say the Tory councils have agreed to ask to be part of the government's priority programming for devolution, which would mean that they would ask to put off county elections for a year. Another council led by the Liberal Democrats with support from the Greens has asked to take part in a programme that will also raise significant concerns about the implications of delaying elections. The government said 11 councils had formally submitted their applications to be part of a programme before Friday's deadline. Many of the local authorities made their decisions late on Thursday, right at the last minute. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, suggested before Christmas that the programme was about Labour trying to avoid elections, tweeting, elections should only be postponed in truly exceptional circumstances. Maybe Labour don't want to face the electorate. When it's the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats, in this case, who are asking for the elections to be postponed. However, with Conservative councils making up most of those applying for the programme, the Liberal Democrats suggest it was the official opposition that was trying to dodge the electorate. Now, I think there's a mix here. It's possible that they're trying to avoid the electorate because they know they'll face a wipeout. And it could also be the case that, they say, look, now is probably not the best time for an election. Brian, thank you so much for that super chat. Making Trump experience gale force winds and a water would be an all-time greatest character assassination. That would be good to see, yes. Or a milkshake like his friend Nigel Farage. Reform UK, which hopes to make significant gains in May's polls, have also objected to delays. Its deputy leader Richard Tice accused Conservative-led councils of bottling it and abandoning the elections. They have everything to gain. Reform have everything to gain here. Now it's interesting because as at the top of the story. It's top of the podcast, the live stream. I ran with this story here, thanks to Reagan Elite, who said, which says here that 12 Reform UK councillors resign over Nigel Farage's leadership. So it's not guaranteed that Reform UK would do really well. They've had a lot of council elections and they haven't succeeded in all of them. The ones where they did win a seat or they actually flipped a council, Reform UK have been very vocal about, but they've been very quiet about the ones that they didn't win. Of course, that's always the case. So the media and Reform like to amplify their importance and their influence and their wins, but they're very quiet about how they're not succeeding in many areas. Anyway, guys, let's move on. Wanted to cover this story as well tonight because it's
this is absolutely the worst fire I've ever seen in my life. And just this morning, I woke up and I was really conscious of my mental state and my mental health because the last 3 days, I've seen such tragedy. I've seen people scared, people in wheelchairs, mothers and fathers trying to find their kids. People having anxiety attacks, panic attacks. All these houses behind me burned to the ground where their families enjoyed wonderful times together with their friends and family. So I'm really very conscious of my mental health today. I'm very conscious that there's really a lot of pain going on right now, and doing whatever I can to help to alleviate it, whether it's moving cars, or it's putting out hot spots, or giving some food to people, or helping people out of their homes. I think I'm in shock, so it's not really registering, you know what I mean? And I think at one point later, when I enter back into the real world, the normal world, it'll all sort of come together. You look at this beautiful home where someone lived, This is where a family lived, and people enjoyed each other, their friends and family. And
I know it's really depressing, and it's a similar situation what's happening in Gaza at the moment. But in regards to what's happening in California, it begs the question: the U.S. has the biggest military in the world. It has the highest GDP per capita, I believe, in the world, and it's not able to stop something like this. It's not able to put in measures to prevent something like this. It's not able to provide the resources necessary to combat this. It seems that there were planes coming from Canada. Canada was asked to provide support because I don't know whether it was a lack of public funding. It was a bureaucratic problem, but how is it possible that the most powerful nation in the world wasn't able to get a grip of this earlier on? I heard that they arrested an arsonist in connection with this wildfire. I saw pictures, and I don't say this is the problem with social media. I saw pictures of people being wrestled to the ground with petrol in their hand, with petrol cans in their hands, or people being arrested over this. So, once again, it's hard to know whether this was started by maliciously, or it was related in a sense to climate change. And of course, climate change makes these things more frequent and more aggressive. And we constantly ignore this.
And our climate reporter Victoria Seabrook joins me now to talk us through all this. So two main things there really, isn't it, Victoria, that crucial 1.5 degree figure that we've all been warned about for so long has been hit now, and that last bit of hope that there is still time to do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. And it can sound a bit abstract when we talk about 1.5. It doesn't sound that high. But this really matters for two reasons. First of all, it is deeply symbolic because under the Paris Agreement, which is the biggest climate treaty the world has ever struck, all governments agreed to try to limit warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So that's before humans started burning fossil fuels at scale. Now, it's very important to say that although the world did breach that, the average global temperatures did exceed 1.5 degrees last year, that doesn't mean that's it forever, because that will only be declared once that has happened over a number of years. And actually the causes last year primarily were climate change. There was also an additional warming effect of the El Nino weather phenomenon that made it that bit warmer. That's faded now, but certainly experts are saying this is a foretaste of what's to come. The world is teetering on the edge of passing it.
Now, and wouldn't you think that the people who are against immigration would be supportive of dealing with climate change? But they're not. The Farages of this world, the conservatives of this world to a lesser extent, but mainly the Farages of this world would be like, we don't want immigrants coming in. Immigrants are a problem. They put pressure on housing, the NHS, schools, infrastructure, all of these things. So we don't want immigrants. Okay, but then let's try and deal with climate. No, we don't believe in climate change. We don't want to invest in renewable energy and stuff like that. We don't want to deal with... how are these two things related? Well, if parts of the world become uninhabitable because of climate change, those people will move. They'll put pressure on the neighboring states, the neighboring countries. Those countries will collapse if those people if those states are overwhelmed, or the people move in and they don't integrate, or there's conflict or whatever. So the climate is creating situations where people are on the move. And if people are moving into countries and destabilizing those countries, then they're going to others will move out of those countries and they'll eventually get to Europe or they get to the UK. So you would imagine people who care about I use that term loosely, but care about immigration would also care about climate change, but they don't for some reason. Now we know that people like Farage and certain right-wing commentators are in the pocket of the fossil fuel industry, so they're against the idea of doing anything about climate change. But isn't it curious that they also don't want to do anything about they want to keep immigrants out or asylum seekers or refugees out, but at the same time, they don't want to do anything about climate change. You would imagine they would be shouting from the rooftops, let's do something about climate change. Let's stop it in its tracks. Let's invest as much as possible so we keep the immigration numbers or refugee numbers down. But for some reason, they just don't get it. It's almost they don't know. Could have been started by a cast of cigarette. The area is so dry. Exactly. This has been happening in Gaza every day for over a year and no one cares. I find it hard to have sympathy for the Americans at the moment. Look, I have sympathy for individuals. I don't have sympathy for governments. I don't have sympathy for states, but I have sympathy for people. And, if people are, as we see, people are struggling, people are being killed in Gaza. There's unbelievable horror in Gaza, and that we should have sympathy for the individuals. I don't have sympathy for organizations, but the same in California. We're hearing a lot about very rich people losing their homes or losing their second homes or third homes, but a lot of ordinary people are struggling as well. And small businesses have been destroyed, and those small businesses employ people. Maybe people on minimum wage, and they're struggling as well. So it's a lot of the. For example, in the California situation, we're hearing a lot of the rich people are losing out, but a lot of ordinary and poor people are losing out as well. And look, I don't want, and this is really bad for the environment as well. Look at all these properties going up in flames. And I think about the wildlife and the nature as well. Like that's, I don't see anything in the news about that. I saw one story about an animal sanctuary that were able to move the animals out before the fire arrived. But I don't know, my heart goes out to anyone who's struggling at this moment. We don't need to be in a situation like this. The world, we have enough money, resources and everything to make sure that nobody's hungry, nobody's homeless, nobody is struggling. It's just a political decision not to. So guys, we're almost at the end of the show. I just want to cover, one final story on a sort of, on a lighter tone. Can I call it a lighter tone? Britain is going to get a new prime minister in 2025. Oh, it's gone. No. It's gone. Damn it. Crap. It was, okay. I don't know why this is here, but, damn it. I should have screenshotted it. So it was the case of Andrew Tate. Let me go back to my screen. Andrew Tate wants to become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He thinks he'll be Prime Minister maybe even this year. He just has a few problems. He needs to get out of prison. Isn't he still in prison? Or at least he has to get out of Romania anyway. So he just needs to get back to the UK, avoid the police. Maybe he can cross on a dinghy. He needs to avoid the police, and he needs to get into a political party. He needs to win votes, all the while avoiding the police. It's going to be a bit difficult, out campaigning. Always looking over. Is the old Bill over there? If the old Bill come, say you haven't seen me. So you have to vote for me, but don't mention that you saw me. So he wants to become prime minister. Doesn't understand what prime minister is. Probably thinks it's like president. Isn't he British? Like if he was American, you could sort of go, okay. You could say, look, he doesn't understand that in Britain it's not like America. The prime minister is not like the Caterers. The prime minister is not like the president. And even if it were like the president, you need the party to back you. And the Bruv party, I don't think is just going to cut. I'd love to know what their policies are on child poverty or on renewable energy, climate change. What do you think Andrew Tate's position on climate change is? Do you think it's going to win over a lot of people? What about the role of the Bank of England? I'd love to know what his position on the role of the Bank of England is. Oh my goodness. Okay, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for your super chats. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job as always. Before we finish, of course, we have our one for the road. I'm just going to load it up here now. So have a great weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. But as always, before we go, enjoy this.
Hello and welcome to whatever Elon Musk wants to talk about. Yes, we've changed our name from The News and are now bringing you 24-hour rolling coverage of the thoughts of the world's richest man. There's no need to follow him on X. We'll report everything he says without the swear words and the definite libel to make it seem like he's more of a concerned observer than a total maniac. So why are we doing this? Well, Mr. Musk is the best friend of the new President of the United States. He's the richest man in the world. He owns our favourite social media company. He could totally buy us if he wanted to. And let us reiterate, he is the richest man in the world. Yes, we'll bring you coverage of everything that he tweets, posts, X's, zeets, vomits, alongside immediate reaction from politicians from across the whole range of the political spectrum, from Kemi Badenoch to Nigel Farage to Tommy Robinson to Andrew Tate. We're not saying that everything he says is right, but it's definitely all right-wing. That's just a joke, Elon. Please, don't block us. We need this. Now, this week, the government voted against a Conservative amendment to the second reading of the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, which called for a national inquiry into grooming gangs. In the old days, we might have explained that that's called a wrecking amendment, and if it had been voted for, the entire bill would have been derailed. It's a common parliamentary tactic used by oppositions to make it look like MPs are voting against something when it's really just a political trick. But forget all that, now we'll tell you that Lord Musk thinks it's a disgrace and that Keir loves child abusers, and leave it at that. Yes, over the next few days we'll bring you exclusive, if you're not an ex, coverage of how King Musk wants to overthrow the British government, release criminals from prison, and also declare himself the funniest man in the world and the best at video games. And also something about how Emperor Musk got pubes before all the other boys and definitely kissed his girlfriend last night, who is definitely real. Yes, if you're after a mix of adolescent neurosis, racist psychosis, and old-fashioned bullying and chauvinism, then we've got a show for you. I mean, after all, it's not like there's anything else to talk about.
Wonderful. Have a great weekend, guys. I'll see you on Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. Oh, we have one from Peter just in at the end. We'll be living in Tate Britain in Big Brough. Sorry, we'll be living in Tate Britain run by Big Brough. Thanks for that, Peter. Well done. Have a great weekend, guys. See you soon. Take care. Good night.